The gleaming research vessel, Astro Seeker, hovered above an unmarked planet in the desolate Nixian void. Zixarian archaeologist Novan Trell pressed her scaled hand against the viewport, watching as the excavation drones returned from the surface. Behind her, the ship's systems hummed with quiet efficiency, monitoring atmospheric conditions on the seemingly barren world below. "Another dead end?" asked Krenvos, her Merculian assistant, whose bioluminescent skin pulsed with disappointed blues and greens. Trell didn't answer immediately. Something about the preliminary scans troubled her. Energy signatures that shouldn't exist on a world abandoned for millennia. This marked the seventh expedition into this restricted sector, each one yielding nothing but cosmic dust and academic ridicule from her peers. "Surface team reports unusual substructure patterns," announced the ship's communications officer. "They're requesting permission to deploy deep scanning equipment." Trell nodded, her scaled ridge bristling with anticipation. "Tell them to proceed with caution. Full containment protocols." 6 hours later, she stood frozen in disbelief inside the ship's primary laboratory. Floating in the containment field before her was an artifact unlike anything cataloged in the archives of known species. The metallic object, impossibly preserved despite its age, bore intricate circuitry more advanced than anything in modern galactic engineering. It resembled a handheld device with an interface designed for appendages with multiple independent digits, unlike the three-fingered grip most spacefaring species evolved to possess. "Carbon dating complete," said Senior Technician Zol, his exoskeletal fingers tapping nervously against his datapad. "Professor Trell, you need to see these results." The timestamp made no sense. According to their equipment, the artifact was over 500,000 years old, predating the emergence of the current galactic civilizations by hundreds of millennia. The Conclave of Historical Sciences established that no species had achieved space travel before 120,000 years ago, when the Arthean collective first left their homeworld. "Run it again," Trell whispered, her scientific training battling against the impossible evidence. The second scan confirmed the first, then the third. "There's more," Zol continued, his mandibles clicking with nervous energy. "We found genetic material preserved in the handling surfaces. The profile doesn't match anything in our database." Trell felt a chill run along her spine ridges. The archives of known species contained biological profiles for every recorded sentient being in charted space, even extinct ones. "Download the complete profile," she ordered, "and prepare a secure transmission to the university's Xenobiology department." As the lab team worked, Trell carefully manipulated the artifact using the containment field's precision controls. The object responded to her adjustments, internal components realigning as if designed to reconfigure based on unknown parameters. A small section on what appeared to be the front surface suddenly illuminated, projecting symbols in an unfamiliar script. "It's still operational," gasped one of the junior researchers. "After 500,000 years." Before anyone could respond, the ship's alarm systems activated. On the surface below, the excavation team reported multiple energy signatures activating throughout the dig site. What they had initially believed to be natural rock formations were revealing themselves as structures, massive technological installations rising from beneath layers of sediment, as if waking from hibernation. "All teams, return to the ship immediately," Trell commanded, her scientific caution overtaking curiosity. "Bring whatever samples you can secure in the next 15 minutes. As night fell across the dig site, Trell watched from the bridge as strange patterns of light spread across the planet's surface. Geometric configurations too precise to be natural phenomena. The dormant world was awakening in response to their presence, as if their excavation had triggered automated systems lying dormant for eons. "Professor," called the sensor officer, "you need to see this." The main view screen displayed an orbital scan of the excavation area. The awakening structures were forming a distinct pattern visible only from above, a symbol that matched exactly the insignia on the recovered artifact. Below it, new symbols appeared in the alien script, changing rapidly before stabilizing. Can we translate that? Trell asked. The linguistics program processed for several moments before displaying its best approximation. Welcome back, children of Earth. Emergency protocols activated. Caretaker systems online. Trell projected ancient texts onto the curved walls of her private research chamber aboard the Astral Seeker. 3 weeks had passed since their hasty departure from the awakening planet. The Galactic Concord had quarantined the entire system within hours of receiving their preliminary report, citing potential xenoarchaeological hazards, a classification rarely used and typically reserved for sites containing biological weapons from forgotten wars. Holographic representations of mythological figures from 100 different cultures shimmered in the air around her. Between sips of stimulant brew, she traced her claw along repeating patterns no other researcher had connected before. The similarities were too specific to be coincidental. Computer, overlay the Dravision cave paintings with the Kelcher recreation tapestry, she instructed. The images merged, revealing nearly identical depictions of bipedal figures with no visible scales, feathers, or exoskeletons, just smooth skin and proportions that matched the biological profile extracted from the artifact. A chime at her door interrupted her concentration. Senior Technician Zol entered, carrying a secure data crystal. The university finally responded to our findings, he said, his exoskeletal features unrateable to most species, but Trell had worked with him long enough to recognize his excitement. They're calling your theory academically irresponsible, but they also authorized access to the restricted archives. Trell inserted the crystal into her terminal. Ancient historical texts from dozens of civilizations filled her screens, all referencing beings with similar descriptions. The quick-minded ones, the adaptive builders, the star children. Different names across vastly different civilizations, but always describing the same beings. Look at these timestamps, she whispered, highlighting data points across the displays. Every reference ends abruptly in the same cosmic era. Whatever these beings were, they disappeared simultaneously across thousands of worlds. Could an extinction event explain it? Zol asked, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. No extinction event could affect systems this widely separated, Trell responded. And look here, writings from the pre-Concord era referring to humans who stepped beyond the veil. Not died out. Left. She pulled up an ancient nursery rhyme from the Procyon system. When stars grow dark and hope seems lost, call upon the hands that built the stars. Though hidden now beyond our sight, the children of Earth wait in twilight. Bedtime stories, Zol said dismissively. Every culture has myths about ancient benefactors who will return in times of need. Then why do so many share these specific details? Trell countered, displaying technological principles underlying faster-than-light travel, attributed in ancient texts to creatures who thought differently than any who came before or since. Their discussion was interrupted by a priority message from the university's administrative council. Trell's research grant had been suspended pending review. All findings were to be surrendered to Concord officials within 3 standard cycles. They're trying to bury this, Trell realized, quickly copying key files to her personal storage devices, just like they've been doing for millennia. Later that night, while most of the crew slept, Trell discovered a sealed record in the Grand Archives database, a vault requiring blood authentication from 6 different species to open. The security protocols were far beyond anything used for typical historical data. Computer, analyze the authentication parameters against known security systems, she commanded. After several moments, the system responded, parameters match security protocols used exclusively for Galactic Concord founding documents and extinction-level threat assessments. Trell sat back, mind racing. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to bury this history, classifying information about these humans at the same security level as planet-killing weapons and existential threats to galactic civilization. What were you? She whispered to the holographic representation of the bipedal figure floating before her. What did you do that frightened them so much they tried to erase you from history? She sent a coded message to colleagues at 7 different research institutions, specialists whose curiosity outweighed their career ambitions. The message contained a single question alongside coordinates to potentially similar sites. Who were the humans, and why does the Concord fear their memory? The sweltering jungle moon of Verilis Prime dripped with moisture as Trell's expanded research team cut through dense vegetation. Enormous leaves, iridescent in the planet's blue-tinted sunlight, gave way beneath precision-cutting tools wielded by researchers from 7 different institutions. Each scientist had answered Trell's coded message, bringing with them expertise in fields ranging from xenolinguistics to theoretical engineering. The energy signature is stronger here, called out Dr. Lynn Voss, a Centaurian physicist whose 4 arms simultaneously operated a complex scanning array, just like the patterns on the first planet. Following coordinates extracted from various artifacts and ancient star charts, they had identified 37 worlds showing evidence of the same technological signature. This was their 5th expedition in as many weeks, each conducted under the guise of routine ecological surveys to avoid Concord scrutiny. There's something artificial about these growth patterns, observed Dr. Maris, a botanical specialist, running her tendrils along a spiraling arrangement of massive trees. These species shouldn't coexist in this formation. It's as if they were deliberately planted to create. She paused, looking upward, a living machine. Trell activated her holographic mapping system, overlaying their ground surveys with orbital scans. The jungle wasn't just vegetation, it was a carefully engineered biological system arranged in mathematical patterns invisible from the ground but perfectly clear from above. It's an atmospheric processor, she realized, watching how air currents move through the precisely arranged biological structures. These trees aren't just trees. They're components of a planetary-scale environmental regulation system. The team followed the pattern to a clearing where a mountain rose sharply from the otherwise flat terrain. Unlike the verdant surroundings, the mountain was bare stone, its surface etched with weathered geometric patterns. "This isn't natural," said Krell, their geological specialist, examining the rock face. "The mineral composition is consistent with the surrounding terrain, but the crystalline structure has been altered at a molecular level." Trell approached a section where the patterns converged into what appeared to be a control interface. Unlike typical Concord technology designed for various appendage configurations, this panel seemed specifically crafted for beings with 5-digited hands. "Just like the artifacts," she whispered, placing her scanning device against the surface. The mountain responded. Sections of stone reconfigured themselves, revealing an entrance where none had existed moments before. Cool air rushed outward as internal lighting systems activated, illuminating a corridor that extended deep into the mountain's core. "Preservation protocols disengaged," announced a voice in a language none of them spoke, yet all somehow understood. "Welcome, researchers." Inside, they discovered a vast chamber containing technology integrated directly with the native ecology, not conquering nature, but enhancing it through methods no current species could replicate. Holographic displays activated as they entered, showing the original state of Verilis Prime, a barren, radiation-soaked moon transformed over centuries into a lush, habitable world. They didn't just visit these worlds, Trell said in awe. They engineered them. The central platform activated, projecting a holographic image of beings with no scales, feathers, or exoskeletons, just soft skin, varied coloration, and expressions that somehow conveyed more emotional range than any known species. The beings moved with a peculiar confidence, handling equipment and interacting with environments across dozens of worlds shown in rapid succession. Cross-reference these locations with current galactic demographics, Trell instructed their data specialist. The results stunned the entire team. Many of these modified worlds later became the birthplaces of currently dominant civilizations, as if someone had prepared these planets as cradles for emerging intelligence. They were gardeners, whispered Dr. Maris. They seeded the galaxy with life. As the team documented these findings, an urgent alert sounded from their ship in orbit. Unknown vessels had entered the system, broadcasting galactic Concord identification codes. Their communication system intercepted a coded transmission ordering their immediate recall to Concord headquarters. Trell looked at her colleagues, determination hardening her features. Download everything. We're not going back empty-handed. The sterile conference room at Concord headquarters felt like a trap. The air recyclers hummed with artificial precision, circulating atmosphere carefully calibrated to accommodate the 12 dominant species that comprised the Galactic Concord's leadership. Trell sat rigidly in a chair designed for someone with a different skeletal structure, making her spine ridges ache uncomfortably. Senior Administrator Vox Caron entered without announcement, his membranous wings folded tightly behind his ceremonial armor. The Venturi official moved with the practiced grace of someone who had navigated bureaucratic mazes for centuries. His compound eyes reflected Trell's image back at her, giving no hint of his thoughts. Professor Trell, he began without preamble, your recent activities have violated 17 different research protocols. Most seriously, you've accessed restricted archaeological sites without proper authorization. Those sites were only classified after we discovered them, Trell countered. Someone doesn't want this research conducted. Chiron's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement or irritation. Your funding has been provided by the Concord Historical Sciences Division. As such, your discoveries belong to the Concord. He slid a suspension order across the polished table toward Trell. The document glowed with embedded security protocols and official seals. Your research grant has been revoked. All findings are now classified under Galactic Security Code 37 Alpha. You and your team will surrender all data, samples, and artifacts collected during your expeditions. Trell felt cold anger crystallizing along her spine. On what grounds? We've discovered evidence of a previously unknown civilization that may have shaped the very foundation of galactic society. This is the most significant archaeological find in recorded history. Precisely, Chiron replied, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Some histories remain buried for the good of all species. The meeting concluded with Trell and her team placed under what was politely termed protective observation in the diplomatic quarters of the station. Guards posted outside their doors ensured they remained where they could be monitored. Later that night, as Trell reviewed what little data they'd managed to hide from confiscation, a soft chime indicated someone at her door. She opened it to find a junior analyst from the Historical Integrity Division, a nervous Mantillian whose crystalline exoskeleton betrayed stress fractures along its edges. "May I come in?" he asked, antennae twitching anxiously. The monitoring systems in this section will experience a 17-minute maintenance cycle starting now. Inside, the analyst introduced himself as Thrix. He glanced constantly at the door while speaking in hushed tones. "There's a faction within the Concord called the Continuity," he whispered. "They've existed since before the official founding of our government. Their primary directive is information control regarding certain historical events and species." He passed her a data crystal while continuing to check for surveillance. The official position is that humans never existed, but their private archives suggest otherwise. The Continuity believes humans were dangerously unpredictable, a species that evolved too quickly and thought too differently to be safely integrated into galactic society. The data crystal contained coordinates to a research outpost hidden in the restricted zone, a segment of space officially quarantined due to stellar radiation, but actually patrolled by Concord military vessels. More disturbing was security footage showing teams of Concord agents systematically destroying or confiscating artifacts matching Trell's discoveries over the past century. "Why are you helping me?" Trell asked. Frick's antennae drooped slightly. "Because history shouldn't be erased, even frightening history. The Continuity claims to protect us from dangerous knowledge, but they've become what they feared, controllers who decide what truths we're allowed to know. As the maintenance cycle neared its end, he moved toward the door. There's a supply transport leaving for the outer colonies tomorrow. The cargo master owes me a favor. If you want to continue your research, be at Docking Bay 17 during the shift change. As dawn broke over the artificial horizon, Trell contacted her core team through encrypted channels. By mid-cycle, they had disabled their tracking devices and made a daring escape in a borrowed survey vessel, their course set for coordinates that officially didn't exist. The derelict space station orbited a dying star at the edge of charted space, its exterior designed to mimic a natural asteroid. From a distance, it appeared to be nothing more than another chunk of cosmic debris caught in the gravity well of the red giant. Trell's stolen survey vessel approached cautiously, running passive scans to avoid detection by any automated defense systems. The structure is definitely artificial, reported Krell, monitoring the sensor array. But I'm detecting no power signatures, no heat emissions, nothing to suggest it's operational. Trell studied the station's irregular surface. Look at the composition analysis. The outer hull is made of compressed asteroidal material, but underneath, she highlighted a section of the scanned data. There's a framework of unknown alloy. Their vessel docked at what appeared to be a maintenance airlock, long dormant but still structurally sound. The team donned environmental suits, unsure if the ancient station maintained life support. Trell led the way, cutting through the sealed inner door with a molecular torch. The passageway beyond was dark and cold, their helmet lights illuminating a corridor untouched for millennia. Dust floated in the zero-gravity environment, undisturbed until their arrival. No signs of damage or conflict, observed Dr. Maris, examining the walls. If this place was abandoned, it was done deliberately and in an organized fashion. They reached what appeared to be a central command hub, a circular chamber with stations arranged around a central holographic projector. As Trell approached, the room suddenly hummed to life. Lights activated, gravity generators engaged, and environmental systems began cycling the stale air. Motion and biological signature detected, announced a calm voice from hidden speakers, initiating revival protocols. Holographic interfaces sprang to life, displaying information in an unknown language that gradually shifted into understandable text, as if the system were learning their languages in real time. The central projector illuminated, forming a rotating emblem, a circle containing a stylized representation of a spiral galaxy. Welcome to Mnemosine Archive Outpost 7, the voice continued, identifying visitors, non-human sentience, technology level, compatible with interstellar travel, cultural markers suggest galactic Concord citizenship. How may this facility assist your research? Stunned into momentary silence, Trell finally stepped forward. What is this place? This installation serves as a repository of human knowledge maintained by autonomous systems, the voice replied. I am the custodial intelligence designated keeper. My function is to preserve and share information about human civilization with qualified researchers. The holographic display shifted, showing interactive historical records spanning hundreds of thousands of years. Through these displays, they learned the truth about humanity's evolution and development. Unlike most galactic species that evolved toward specialization and stability, humans had developed on a world of constant environmental change and challenges. Their homeworld's harsh conditions forced rapid evolution of problem-solving abilities and unprecedented neurological flexibility. While other species adapted to their environments through biological specialization, humans remained adaptable generalists who could survive virtually anywhere by changing their environment rather than waiting to be changed by it. This adaptability extended to their cognitive patterns, explained Keeper, displaying neural mapping comparisons between humans and other species. Where most sentient minds seek patterns and stability, human cognition thrived on identifying exceptions and creating novel solutions. This allowed them to make technological leaps that other species considered impossible or dangerously experimental. The archives showed humans expanding across the stars not as conquerors, but as explorers and problem solvers, mixing with other species and sharing knowledge, until something called the Convergence changed everything. The continuity was originally formed by a coalition of species who feared humanity's unpredictable development trajectory. Keeper explained, displaying historical footage of early diplomatic meetings. Some advocated for containment, others for controlled integration. The final resolution was unexpected. The display shifted to massive construction projects across multiple star systems, a coordinated effort to build something unprecedented. The humans chose their own path. Keeper continued. They created a dimensional fold where they could continue their development without destabilizing galactic politics. This installation was left to preserve their legacy until the appropriate time for reconnection. Trell approached the primary navigation console. Can you show us the location of this dimensional fold? The observatory systems activated, revealing coordinates to a location officially designated as uninhabitable space. The gateway remains, Keeper confirmed, waiting for those who ask the right questions. The coordinates led to a binary star system surrounded by intense radiation fields that conventional wisdom deemed impossible to traverse. Trell stood on the bridge of their vessel, now upgraded with technology recovered from the archive station. The viewscreen displayed swirling clouds of energized particles forming beautiful but deadly patterns across their path. The radiation levels are off the charts, reported Krell, recalibrating the sensors for the third time. According to these readings, we should be experiencing complete systems failure already. Yet we're not, Trell observed, studying the unusual data patterns. The radiation isn't behaving according to standard physical models. Dr. Lynn Voss, who had been quiet for most of the journey, suddenly looked up from her specialized equipment. It's not radiation at all, she announced. The energy patterns are ordered, artificially generated. As if triggered by this realization, their systems began failing one by one, not through damage, but through mathematically impossible reconfigurations of their operating parameters. Navigation displayed coordinates that couldn't exist in real space. Communication systems received signals from their own transmitters before they were sent. Environmental controls reported temperatures simultaneously above boiling and below freezing. Some kind of defensive measure, Trell suggested, trying to reroute essential systems. When life support threatened to fail, she made a desperate decision. Broadcast on all frequencies. We come seeking knowledge about humanity. We've been to the Mnemosyne Archive. The chaos stopped instantly. The ship's systems restored themselves to normal operation. On the main view screen, a figure materialized, a holographic representation of a human female wearing a simple uniform with an insignia that matched the emblem from the archive station. Interesting, the figure said, studying them with unnerving intensity. You're the first visitors to reach this far in approximately 37,000 years. The entity introduced herself as Defense Intelligence Construct Echo, explaining that she evaluated all potential contacts with the human enclave. What followed was not an interrogation, but a series of impossible challenges, moral dilemmas, engineering problems, philosophical questions, all designed to test not their knowledge, but their capacity for growth and adaptation. A predatory species approaches a pre-spaceflight civilization, Echo posed. Intervention would violate principles of non-interference, but non-action guarantees extinction. What do you do? What is the relationship between consciousness and reality? She asked next, as complex mathematical equations floated in the air between them. Design a propulsion system using only the materials found in this simulation, she challenged, presenting them with an environment containing seemingly incompatible elements. After hours of tests, Echo paused, her expression thoughtful. Humans value potential over perfection, she explained as the challenges concluded. Your willingness to attempt what you believed impossible has been noted. The radiation field surrounding the system dissolved, revealing it as a sophisticated illusion hiding a massive structure, an artificial Dyson sphere surrounding an engineered star. The construct was impossibly vast, its inner surface containing what appeared to be continents, oceans, and weather systems visible even at this distance. What you're seeing is the outer shell of what humans call the sanctuary, Echo explained. A dimensional space where time flows differently than in your reality. The 500,000 years of separation experienced by the galaxy has been just over 15,000 years within the dimensional fold due to temporal dilation effects. As their ship was guided toward a docking port in the sphere's outer shell, Echo shared a revelation that stunned the entire crew. They'd been watching, waiting, and preparing. The activation of the Mnemoscene archive wasn't an accident. It was triggered deliberately when sensors detected a specific threat pattern emerging in your civilization. What threat? Trell asked, suddenly concerned. Something the humans have encountered before, Echo replied, her expression grave. Something that hunts between the galaxies and consumes civilizations from within. They call it the Void Convergence, and according to their calculations, it has already begun infiltrating your Concord. The world inside the Dyson sphere defied comprehension. Trell stood on an observation platform overlooking a landscape that should not have been possible. Vast territories floated in three-dimensional space, some connected by shimmering bridges of light, others existing as self-contained biospheres. Cities rose and reconfigured themselves like living organisms, buildings flowing into new shapes as needed. Structures blended seamlessly with natural formations in designs that simultaneously honored mathematical precision and artistic expression. How can all this exist within a closed system? Dr. Maris whispered, her botanical expertise struggling to categorize the impossible fusion of technology and biology surrounding them. The dimensional fold creates space-time conditions that don't conform to standard physics, explained their guide, a human who had introduced herself as Helena Chen. Unlike the holographic Echo, Chen was undeniably physical, a being of flesh and blood, though subtly different from the historical records they had seen. Chen led them through a transportation hub where platforms of light carried occupants between destinations. The humans themselves varied tremendously in appearance. Some looked conventional, similar to the ancient recordings, while others had clearly modified themselves in ways that blurred the line between biology and technology. Some existed as energy patterns that coalesced into physical form when interaction required it. Despite their diversity, all shared the same intense curiosity about Trell and her team. After leaving galactic society, we focused our adaptability inward, Chen explained as they entered what she called the historical observatory. We explored frontiers of consciousness and existence while carefully monitoring developments outside our enclave. The observatory contained thousands of monitoring stations where humans studied real-time feeds from across the galaxy. Some analysts appeared to interface directly with the data streams, their consciousness temporarily merging with the information. "You've been watching us all this time?" Trell asked, a mixture of awe and unease in her voice. "Observing, not interfering," Chen corrected. "We needed space to become what we could be without forcing our pace of change onto species who valued stability." She guided them to a secure chamber where a council of human representatives waited. Some appeared physically present, others attended as projections, and a few existed as patterns of light and energy with no discernible form. Chen introduced the leader as Elder Sophia Reyes, whose physical appearance suggested middle age despite her 1,000-year lifespan. "We didn't leave because we feared other species," Reyes explained, her voice carrying unusual harmonic overtones. "We left because we feared what we might become without sufficient time to develop ethical frameworks for our technological capabilities." The humans demonstrated technologies that manipulated fundamental forces, consciousness transfer systems that had made biological death optional, and bioengineering that allowed them to adapt to any environment within minutes rather than generations. Yet what impressed Trell most was their art, creations that somehow resonated with her alien biology on levels she could not explain. "Why maintain the archives?" Trell asked. "Why leave breadcrumbs for someone to find you?" Reyes exchanged glances with her fellow council members. Because isolation was never meant to be permanent. We've been preparing for the right moment to reconnect. She gestured toward a massive display where numerous sectors of the galaxy pulsed with ominous red patterns. We detected something moving through the darkness between galaxies, something ancient and patient that consumes civilizations from within. The void convergence, Trell remembered Echo's warning. We've encountered it before, Reyes confirmed. In fact, it was one of the reasons we chose to withdraw rather than fight a war that would have devastated multiple species. We've spent millennia developing defenses and countermeasures, knowing it would eventually return. She fixed Trell with an intense gaze. Your discovery of our archives wasn't accidental, Professor. We activated the beacons because the time has come. The Convergence has already inserted influence agents into key positions throughout the Galactic Concord. The continuity, Trell realized with growing horror. They're not protecting galactic civilization from humanity's memory. They're preparing it for consumption, Reyes finished grimly. And we need your help to stop them. The observatory's central chamber projected a three-dimensional map of the galaxy where numerous sectors pulsed with ominous red light. Elder Reyes manipulated the display with subtle hand gestures, zooming in on specific regions where the influence of the void convergence had taken root. It doesn't invade with ships or weapons, she explained. It infiltrates through ideas, corrupted philosophies that turn civilizations against themselves. The continuity began as a legitimate organization, but over centuries, key positions were filled by those subtly influenced by convergence thought patterns. Trell watched in horror as classified Concord communications played out, revealing that the very officials who shut down her research were unknowingly serving the Convergence's interests. Administrator Caron appeared in several recordings, his decisions consistently pushing policies that isolated species from one another and centralized power structures. How can we possibly fight something this entrenched? Asked Dr. Voss, her four arms crossed defensively across her torso. A new human entered the chamber, a tall figure whose body seemed to shift between solid matter and energy patterns. We've prepared for this moment since before we left, he explained. His name was Marcus Webb, introduced as the Director of Reintegration Strategy. Our withdrawal wasn't just for our development, it was strategic positioning for the coming storm, Webb continued, bringing up detailed plans on auxiliary displays. The Convergence expected us to fight directly 500,000 years ago. Our disappearance confused it, disrupted its patterns. Now we have the advantage of surprise. The humans didn't plan a dramatic return as conquerors or saviors, Webb explained. Such an approach would trigger exactly the kind of fear and resistance the Convergence could exploit. Instead, they had designed a subtle reintegration program, introducing their innovations through seemingly natural discoveries, positioning human agents within key systems, and gradually sharing defensive technologies that could resist the Convergence's influence. The technologies we left behind on those 37 worlds weren't abandoned by accident, Reyes added. They contain embedded patterns that inoculate developing minds against Convergence influence. Every species that evolved on those worlds carries a natural resistance. Trell's team would play a crucial role in the plan. As non-humans who had discovered the truth independently, they provided perfect cover for initial contact. The first human ambassadors would accompany them back to Concord space under the guise of a newly discovered species from the uncharted regions. Technically true, given how much humans had changed. We've already begun, Webb revealed, showing footage of seemingly normal citizens across various worlds. Teachers, artists, engineers, and children. Many humans have been living among the galactic community for centuries, placed there as sleeper agents awaiting activation. You infiltrated us. Krell asked, his tone accusatory. Elder Reyes shook her head. Not infiltrated. Integrated. These individuals live real lives, form real bonds. They're not puppets or spies, but bridges between our civilizations. She approached Trell, her age-lined face solemn. We don't seek control or dominance. The convergence feeds on fear, isolation, and homogeneity. Our greatest weapon against it is the very diversity of thought and approach that once made other species uncomfortable around us. As Trell's ship prepared to depart, now upgraded with technologies centuries beyond current capabilities, the first delegation of human ambassadors boarded. They appeared as ordinary humanoids, their more exotic adaptations temporarily suppressed to ease first contact. Standing at the airlock, Reyes clasped Trell's hand in the traditional Zixarian gesture of alliance. The galaxy's greatest myth is about to become its greatest hope, not as gods or monsters from ancient legends, but as partners who transformed isolation into preparation for the very moment when adaptation would matter most. She pressed a small device into Trell's palm. When you reach Concord space, activate this. It will awaken our people and begin the resistance. Trell looked back at the impossible world humans had built, then to the stars beyond where danger waited. What if they don't believe us? What if they fear your return? Ray smiled, an expression Trell was beginning to understand. That's why we need you, Professor. Some stories are better told by those who discovered them for themselves.